I want to talk about three conservative voices that I may disagree with from time to time. I've disagreed with just about everyone I've heard an opinion from in my life, but at some point. But I think these three people are definitely worth listening to for their overall views on many things. And I just want to say before I get right into it is that even though I might not feel that they're right on everything regarding guns, abortion, healthcare, one thing that none of them have said or or a couple of things that none of them have denied are that climate change is real and political correctness or the obsession with it is becoming somewhat of an issue. So let's get into it. So the first guy I want to say is definitely worth listening to and hearing from is Ben Shapiro. Now, Ben Shapiro is not nice. I don't think I'd really ever want to hang out with him. He said some things that I've been like, whoa, that's extreme, but okay. But I will say that everything he says is at least bounded by logic, even if it's with his take on it. I linked this below in the description, but there's a debate he did with Cenk Uygur of, I don't know if I pronounce his name right, but he's of the Young Turks, who's definitely more on the progressive side of things. And I tried to watch it. It's about an hour long. You don't have to watch the whole thing, but with my neutral take, Ben destroyed him. What I took away from it was his issues or his position on healthcare, and he says healthcare, like any service, whether it would be education or the fire department or healthcare or any service provided by a government or private enterprise, can only be two of three things, and that's good, fast, and cheap. And with healthcare, we can't really sacrifice fast because you have a heart attack, you need to touch it quick, you can't wait. And so we only have good and cheap left. And he said his wife is a doctor, and we don't really want to sacrifice quality either, so we have a system where we have to sacrifice cheap. It's expensive. And until we're willing to sacrifice one of those other two things, it's just an inevitable thing. We're going to have to pay a lot of money for healthcare. Other countries like Canada, it's not good there. It's cheap and it's quick, but I've talked to Canadian people that I even lived with a Canadian before, and he says, yeah, the healthcare there kind of sucks, even though it's nice that it's free. And then there's other countries that have free healthcare that might be somewhat better, but they don't have some of the other issues that we have in America, like plenty of people that can't afford to pay for it, or they can't afford to pay their taxes that would pay for it. So that's just one thing that he says that I agree with, and I learned something from him. So I think that he's a voice that I believe is worth listening to. The second I want to say is Steven Crowder. Now, again, Steven has said maybe some mean things. He speaks very fast. He's actually one of the very few successful conservative comedians. He has a podcast. He does stand up sometimes. That I find is first off funny, and then worth listening to. Again, I don't believe everything he says. I actually have a conversation between him and Ben Shapiro about the Cenk Uygur debate in the description that I think is worth watching. But his big thing is that he rails against political correctness. He finds fake outrage, or maybe not fake outrage, but there is a lot of manufactured outrage out there, and people trying to limit, whether it's conservative or liberal, people from speaking on college campuses or whatnot. Or another gripe he has are people that walk out on comedians for saying something that might be a little too racy. And he says, and he's just a staunch defender of that. Now, he said some things about guns I don't really agree with. He said some things about a lot of other things I can't think of them off the top of my head. But I just want to say that he is definitely worth listening to. And then if you don't like him or think that he's too mean or something, or just speaks too fast or whatever it is, you don't have to listen to him anymore. But if you've never heard of him, he's worth watching. The last guy I want to talk about, and he is probably more controversial than the first two, and please just hear me out on this, is Milo Yiannopoulos, who was he used to be the editor of Breitbart Technology. I'm not sure what he's doing right now. He said I think he's a disgusting person, to be honest. Not literally. I mean, some of the things he said just shocks me. But what he says holds logic in a lot of ways, and it might appall me and like, wow, I can't believe you just said that. But his big position, yeah, one thing is he's also staunchly against political correctness, and he's not really against it, I guess, but it bothers him when people get upset about anyone saying anything about anybody. But what he has said, and I agree with, is creating laws to protect certain groups of people, whether they're a minority or disadvantaged in any way, doesn't really solve the problem. I mean, we have plenty of civil rights laws in America, and that hasn't cured racism. Racism is real, whether we want to admit it or not. There are plenty of people out there that don't have the same advantages of everybody else based on their skin color, their gender, what have you, their sexuality, whatever have you. And what he, as well as the other two people I mentioned before, they all have accepted that the world is not a friendly place, and it's hard to accept that sometimes. I get it, but I kind of agree with them, and that total equality or equity for all is not possible, and so they will strive for, instead of trying to make everything perfectly fair, that's not possible, they will try to make things as fair as we can. And they do that in a very harsh way, and it doesn't really sound like that's what they're trying to do. I linked the description of, or I linked a video of him on Bill Maher's show below, and he'll say some things that will really appall you. But if you really think about what he's saying, it makes sense, and you definitely don't have to agree with everything he's saying. But I think that he's definitely worth a watch. And then you can throw something at your computer or your TV or whatnot afterward. But his voice, I think, is pretty important. So those are just three conservatives that I think are worth listening to. There are plenty that I think are not worth listening to. Nothing they say holds any logic. It's all just innuendo, opinions, but what about, false equivalencies, all that kind of thing. But I think those three guys have some real takes on things that hold logic and are important for us to at least listen to and then debate. So if you agree with me or disagree with me, make a comment, tweet me, email me, do whatever you like. I'd love to hear what you have to say. Have a great day.